full-grown beard over his blunt, common face. One foot was short in his boot, as if he had lost his toes in a blizzard, a mark not uncommonly set by unfriendly nature on the men who defied its force in this country. He wore a duck-shooting jacket, the pockets of it bulging as if with game. His companion was a much younger man, slender, graceful in the saddle, rather handsome in a swarthy, defiant way. He ranged up beside the spokesman as if to take full share in whatever was to come. Both of them were armed with revolvers, the elder of the two with a rifle in addition, which he carried in a leather scabbard, black and slick with age, slung on his saddle under his thigh. "You'll have to get permission from this lady before you go through here," Lambert told him calmly. Vesta Philbrook had stepped back as if she had presented her case and waited adjudication. She stood by the old negro where he sat in the dust, her hand on his head, not a word more to add to her case, seeming to have passed it on to this slim, confident, soft-spoken stranger with his clear eyes and steady hand, who took hold of it so competently. "I've been cutting this pretty little fence for 10 years, and I'll keep on cutting it, and going through whenever I feel like it. I don't have to get no woman's permission, no man's neither, to go where I want to go, kid." The man dropped his hand to his revolver as he spoke, the last word with a twisting of the lip, a showing of his scorbutic teeth, a sneer that was at once an insult and a goad. The next moment he was straining his arms above his head as if trying to pull them out of their sockets, and his companion was displaying himself in a like manner, Lambert's gun down on them, Taterleg coming in deliberately a second or two behind. "Keep them right there," was the Duke's caution, jerking his head to Taterleg in the manner of a signal understood. Taterleg rode up to the fence cutters and disarmed them, holding his gun comfortably in their ribs as he worked with swift hand. The rifle he handed down to the old negro, who was now on his feet, and who took it with a bow and a grave face across which a gleam of satisfaction flashed. The holsters with revolvers in them he passed to the Duke, who hung them on his saddle-horn. "Pile off," Taterleg ordered. They obeyed, wrathful but impotent. Taterleg sat by, chewing gum, calm and steady as if the thing had been rehearsed 100 times. The Duke pointed to the old negro's hat. "Pick it up," he ordered the younger man. "Dust it off and give it to him." The fellow did as directed with evil face. It hurt his high pride, just as the Duke intended that it should hurt. Lambert nodded to the man who had knocked the old fellow down with a blow of his heavy revolver. "Dust off his clothes," he said. Vesta Philbrook smiled as she witnessed the swift humbling of her ancient enemy. The old negro turned himself arrogantly, presenting the rear of his broad and dusty pantaloons, but the bristling, red-faced rancher balked. He looked up at Lambert, half choked on the bone of his rage. "I'll die before I do it," he declared with a curse. Lambert beat down the defiant, red-balled, glowering eyes with one brief, straight look. The fence-cutter broke a tip of sage and set to work, the old man lifting his arms like a strutting gobbler, his head held high, the pain of his hurt forgotten in the triumphant moment of his revenge. "You got some wire and tools around here handy, Miss Philbrook?" Lambert inquired. "These men are going to do a little fence-fixing this morning for a change." The old negro pranced off to get the required tools, throwing a look back at the two prisoners now and then, covering his mouth with his hand to keep back the explosion of his mirth. Badly as he was hurt, his enjoyment of the unprecedented situation seemed to cure him completely. His mistress went after him, doubtful of his strength, with nothing but a quick look into Lambert's eyes as she passed to tell him how deeply she felt. It was a remarkable procession for the Bad Lands that set out from the cross-line fence a few minutes later, the two free rangers starting under escort to repair the damage done to a despised fence man's barrier. One of them carried a wire stretcher, the chain of it wound around his saddle-horn, the other a coil of barbed wire and such tools as were required. After they had proceeded a little way, Taterleg thought of something. "Don't you reckon we might need a couple of posts, Duke?" he asked. The Duke thought perhaps they might come in handy. They turned back accordingly, and each of the trespassers was compelled to shoulder an oak post, with much blasphemy and threatening of future adjustment. In the manner of marching, each free ranger carrying his cross as none of his kind ever had carried it before, they rode to the scene of their late depredations. Vesta Philbrook stood at the gate and watched them go, reproaching herself for silence in the presence of this man who had come to her assistance with such sure and determined hand. She never had found it difficult before to thank anybody who had done her a generous turn, but here her tongue had lain as still as a hare in its covert, and her heart had gone trembling in the gratitude which it could not voice. A strong man he was, and full of commanding courage, but neither so strong nor so mighty that she had need to keep as quiet in his presence as a kitchen maid before a king. But he would have to pass that way coming back, and she could make amends. The old negro stood by, chuckling his pleasure at the sight, drawing away into the distance of the pasture where his mistress's cattle fed. "Ananias, do you know who that man is?" she asked. "Lord, Miss Vesta, course I do. Didn't you hear his hoss wrangler call him the Duke?" "I heard him call him Duke." "He's that man they call Duke of Chimney Butte. I know that hoss he's riding. That hoss used to be Jim Wilder's old outlaw. That Duke man killed Jim and took that hoss away from him. What he's done. That was while you was gone. You didn't hear about it." "Killed him and took his horse? Surely he must have had some good reason, Ananias." "I don't know, and I ain't a-carin'. That's him, and that's what he done." "Did you ever hear of him killing anybody else?" "Oh, plenty," said the old man with easy generosity. "I bet he killed 100 men, maybe more than 100. "But you don't know," she said, smiling at the old man's extravagant recommendation of his hero. "I don't know, but I bet he is," said he. "Look at him," he chuckled. "Look at old Nick Haggis and that ornery low-down Injun blood boy." Chapter 9.